Have you ever noticed that some of the loneliest people you know are the ones who seem to have everything figured out? They're calm, self-sufficient, maybe even a little distant. But here's what most people miss. That distance isn't coldness, it's protection. It's what happens when your mind has learned, over years of small heartbreaks, that reaching out hurts more than staying silent. And the strangest part? The world sees them as antisocial when really they might be the ones who crave connection the most. They've just forgotten how to believe they deserve it. Here's something most people don't talk about. Loneliness doesn't always look like someone sitting alone in a dark room. Sometimes it looks like success. Sometimes it looks like independence. Sometimes it wears the mask of, I'm just really busy right now. But underneath that mask is something psychologists and philosophers have been trying to understand for centuries: the quiet catastrophe of feeling fundamentally unseen. The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer spent much of his life exploring human suffering and the nature of connection. He believed that we're all trapped in what he called our own subjective worlds. Essentially, we're stuck inside our own heads, unable to truly merge with another person's experience. And while that sounds depressing, Schopenhauer wasn't trying to make us feel hopeless. He was trying to explain why real connection is so rare and why loneliness cuts so deep when it happens. Because here's the thing, we live in the most connected era in human history. We have more ways to reach people than ever before, yet loneliness has become an epidemic. Studies show that chronic isolation affects your body the same way smoking 15 cigarettes a day does. It's not just emotional pain, it's physical. Your immune system weakens, your sleep becomes restless, your brain actually begins to rewire itself around the expectation of rejection. So why does this matter now, in 2025? Because we're living in a world that celebrates independence while quietly punishing vulnerability. We're told to not need anyone, to be self-made, to find happiness within ourselves. And those aren't bad goals, but they become dangerous when they convince people that needing connection is weakness, that wanting to be understood is somehow immature. The result? Millions of people walking around with a wound they can't name, feeling defective for wanting something every human being is hardwired to need. The invisible wound. Let me tell you what actually happens when someone becomes chronically lonely. It doesn't start with a dramatic moment. There's no single day where you wake up and decide, that's it, I'm done with people. Instead, it's a collection of paper cuts that eventually leaves a scar. Maybe you shared something that mattered to you, and the person you told made a joke out of it. Maybe you reached out to someone during a difficult time and they said we should hang out soon, but never followed through. Maybe you noticed that you're always the one initiating plans, always the one checking in, and when you stopped, the silence was deafening. Your brain is incredibly good at pattern recognition. It's how we survived as a species. But here's where it gets tricky. After enough of these experiences, your brain starts treating social connection as a threat. It's like touching a hot stove repeatedly. Eventually, you stop reaching for it altogether, even when it's not hot anymore. Psychologists call this learned helplessness, but I think it's more accurate to call it learned self-protection. And here's where Schopenhauer's philosophy becomes uncomfortably relevant. He argued that humans are driven by an endless cycle of desire and disappointment. We want connection desperately, we reach for it, it doesn't fulfill us the way we hoped, so we pull back, only to want it again later. It's not that connection is impossible, it's that our expectations and reality rarely align. We're searching for someone who can step fully into our inner world, but everyone is trapped in their own one. The performance trap. Now, here's something fascinating that happens next. When you've been hurt enough times, you start building what I call a social shell. You create a version of yourself that seems fine, competent, independent, maybe even cheerful. You laugh at the right moments, you ask people about their lives. You perform the rituals of connection without actually connecting. And people believe it. They see you as someone who has it together. They might even envy your independence. But inside, you're watching yourself from a distance, wondering why nothing feels real anymore. You're functioning, but you're not living. You're present, but you're not there.
This is what Schopenhauer meant when he talked about the hedgehog's dilemma, a parable about hedgehogs trying to stay warm in winter. They huddle together for warmth, but their spines hurt each other, so they move apart. Then they get cold again, so they move closer. They're stuck in this painful dance of needing closeness but being hurt by it. That's exactly what happens to people who've been lonely for too long. They want intimacy, but intimacy requires vulnerability. And vulnerability feels like handing someone a weapon and hoping they don't use it. So they keep people at an arm's length, close enough to not seem weird, far enough to stay safe. The problem, you can't build real friendship from that distance. You can only build acquaintances. The brain under siege. Let me get a bit technical for a moment, because this part is crucial. When you're isolated for extended periods, your brain doesn't just feel lonely, it physically changes. The amygdala, the part of your brain that processes threats, becomes hyperactive. You start seeing danger in neutral situations. Someone doesn't text back for a few hours, and your mind spirals. They're angry at me, they don't want to talk anymore, I said something wrong. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that helps you regulate emotions and think rationally, starts to weaken. It's like your brain is stuck in survival mode, constantly scanning for rejection, constantly preparing for the worst. You become a detective of disappointment, analyzing every word, every pause, every facial expression for signs that you're about to be abandoned again. And here's the cruelest part. This hypervigilance pushes people away. When you're constantly anxious about being rejected, you act differently. You might come across as needy or cold, too intense or too detached. People sense something is off, even if they can't articulate what it is. And when they pull back, not because you're defective, but because humans naturally respond to anxiety with distance, it confirms everything your brain has been telling you. See, I knew I couldn't trust this. I knew I wasn't worth staying for. Schopenhauer would say this is the will, that blind, driving force inside us turning against itself. We want connection so badly that we sabotage it. We're our own hedgehogs, pricking ourselves with our own spines.
The distortion of time and self. There's another dimension to chronic loneliness that people rarely discuss. It changes how you experience time itself. When you have no one to share your days with, time becomes strange. Weekends feel the same as weekdays. Holidays lose their meaning because those celebrations are designed for togetherness. You stop marking moments because moments only feel significant when they're witnessed. Research shows that lonely people literally perceive time as moving slower. Minutes stretch, hours drag. It's because your consciousness is turned entirely inward. You're living inside your thoughts instead of in the flow of shared experience. And when you're stuck in your own head for too long, you start to question your own reality. You begin to wonder, am I actually interesting, or have I just convinced myself I am? Are my feelings valid, or am I being too sensitive? Do I even exist in any meaningful way if no one is there to reflect me back to myself? This is what Schopenhauer understood deeply, that we don't just need other people for companionship. We need them to confirm that we're real. Without that mirror, you can start to feel like a ghost in your own life. You go through motions, you achieve things, maybe even impressive things. But there's no one to celebrate with, no one to say, I'm proud of you, or I knew you could do it. Success feels hollow. Failure feels isolating. Everything becomes muted, like you're experiencing life through a thick pane of glass. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn, because something extraordinary often happens to people who've spent long periods in solitude. They develop a kind of depth that others rarely reach. They become observers of human nature. They think about connection in ways that socially comfortable people never have to. They understand nuance, subtext, the unspoken weight of a glance or a pause. Schopenhauer himself was like this. Deeply isolated, often bitter, yet capable of profound insights into human nature precisely because he stood outside of it. When you're on the periphery, you see patterns that people in the center miss. You notice who checks on whom. You see which friendships are genuine and which are just convenient. You understand the difference between someone who listens and someone who's just waiting for their turn to talk. And ironically, this depth makes lonely people some of the most capable of true friendship, if only someone would take the time to see past their walls. They know what it means to be overlooked, so they notice others who are overlooked. They understand what it feels like to be misunderstood, so they listen more carefully. They've spent so much time analyzing connection that they value it more deeply than people who've always had it. The tragedy is that this very depth can make connection harder, because once you've thought this much about relationships, once you've seen how rare real understanding is, you can't settle for surface level anymore. You'd rather be alone than fake it. And in a world where most socializing is performative, where most conversations never go beneath small talk, that's a lonely position to hold, but it's also a position of integrity. Schopenhauer believed that most people live in a kind of waking sleep, never questioning, never truly aware. The lonely person, in their isolation, has been forced into awareness. They've had to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, about themselves, about what connection really means. And once you've seen that clearly, you can't unsee it. So where does this leave us? If you're someone who's felt this kind of loneliness, the kind that's invisible, the kind that makes you question your worth, I want you to understand something crucial. You're not broken. You're not defective. You're just caught in a pattern that your brain learned to protect you. The path forward isn't about suddenly becoming extroverted or forcing yourself into social situations that feel inauthentic. It's about something much quieter and more powerful, learning to trust yourself again first. Because real connection can only grow where self-trust already exists. If you don't believe your voice matters, you'll always silence it. If you think your needs are burdensome, you'll always hide them. Schopenhauer would tell you that suffering is inevitable, but how we respond to it defines who we become. You can let loneliness harden you, or you can let it teach you what kind of connection you truly need. Not the shallow kind, not the performative kind, but the rare, honest kind where you can exist without editing yourself. Start small. Maybe it's responding to a message you'd normally overthink. Maybe it's saying yes to something even though your instinct is to decline. Maybe it's just being a little more honest when someone asks how you're doing. These micro acts of courage rebuild the bridge between you and the world, one plank at a time. And here's something to hold on to. The fact that you've thought this deeply about connection means you're capable of profound friendship. You're not looking for the crowd. You're looking for your people. And they're out there, probably feeling just as unseen as you do, waiting for someone brave enough to be real first. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever felt invisible in a crowded room? What's one small thing you've done recently to reconnect with the world? Sometimes just sharing your experience helps someone else feel less alone. And if you found value in this exploration of Schopenhauer's ideas and the psychology of loneliness, hit that like button. It helps this message reach others who might need it. Consider subscribing if you want more content on philosophy, psychology, and the deeper questions about what it means to be human. We're building a community here of people who think deeply and feel deeply, and you're part of it. Remember, loneliness isn't the end of your story. It's just the chapter where you learn what you're really looking for. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.